This episode was produced by Founders Hive, a community of successful startup founders, industry experts, and investors promoting entrepreneurship in Switzerland and helping early stage business concepts get ready for seed stage investment. Founders Hive is a partner of the entrepreneurship training program empowered by InnoSwiss, the Swiss innovation agency supporting SMEs, startups, research institutions, and other Swiss organizations in their research and development activities. Click the link in the show notes to find out more about both these initiatives.
A single crucial mistake many industrial tech companies do is that they develop an amazing tech, they impress their end clients using sales-led strategy, but when it comes to go-to-market, the daily user experience of how it functions within the ecosystem, it sometimes disappoints, right? And in the end, as much as the end client wants it, there will be resistance within the chain that will be difficult to overcome as well.
Welcome to the Swisspreneur Show, a podcast about startup stories and learnings from experienced entrepreneurs. If you enjoy listening to our show, make sure to follow the podcast and leave a rating. And now, here's your host, Sylvan.
Ramzi, Igor, a very well welcome to the Swisspreneur Show. It's a pleasure to have you as guests today.
Thanks. Nice to be here as well.
Very nice. Thank you.
Perfect. I want to directly start with a short intro question. Ramzi, you're the founder and CEO at Drupal, a B2B clean tech building a water intelligence platform. First of all, this is very difficult to imagine what that is. What is a water intelligence platform? Please tell us more about that.
The reason why Drupal exists is because there is supply of water from utilities that goes up to the building. Once the water enters the building, this is where the market stops today. You have a meter, you count the water to build that water. But what is happening behind that meter, where it is used precisely at the point of use, we have no data, no digitalization today. And actually, you have more than 100 billion water assets, namely bathroom fixtures, water treatment systems, appliances that use water on a day-to-day basis, that you use every day, but you don't have a clue on their performance, their maintenance need, and their efficiency in terms of water and energy. Drupal is here to digitize that last mile with a water intelligence platform, combining hardware, IoT devices, and AI-enabled platform to provide SaaS-driven services.
Now that you explain it that way, it makes a ton of sense. That's super cool what you're building. Amazing.
Thank you.
Igor, you are the CEO at Hydromia, a company that is automating remote inspections of submerged assets. That sounds very mysterious to me. Are we talking about submarines here, or what are you guys up to?
Well, we're working on solving a huge communication gap in the marine environment. You see, radio waves do not propagate underwater the same way that they do in the air. And so imagine how would we communicate today if it was not for satellite, cellular, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth. All these are radio comms that are not available underwater. And so today the industries with submerged assets rely on acoustic communication for wireless data harvesting. Say, for instance, asset integrity condition of an infrastructure on the seafloor. But acoustic technology is extremely slow, consumes a lot of power, and introduces a lot of noise in the ocean. So think of it as a dial-up of the 90s, really. As a result, the companies cannot rely on wireless comms for data harvesting, and no IoT underwater is possible really today. So they use heavy ships with bulky subsea vehicles for data collection on the seafloor, which is extremely inefficient. It's costly, it's dangerous, it's polluting. And the issue is there is no single elegant solution to radio. And to answer your question, no submarines, but we develop high bandwidth optical wireless networks. Think of it as underwater Wi-Fi. And we marry it up with portable intelligence robotics that we think of as intelligent data mules, really.
Wow, that also sounds amazing what you're building. So exciting to see two extraordinary startups coming out of Switzerland. Today, in this opposing views format, I would like to talk to you about probably a struggle or decision that many founders have to take along the way. We want to talk about product led versus sales led growth. And I want to start with you, Ramzi. Drupal is, we heard, a B2B clean tech company. And I just wonder, can you share a bit how your product naturally drives adoption? Is your growth more product led or more sales led?
Very good question, Sylvian. Indeed, we are a B2B company with different target audiences as our technology is agnostic, and so we can build different products for different ICPs. Our products or our range of products or solutions drive adoptions. I would say at the beginning, we had to make a product-led strategy. But along the way, and once you find your first product market fit, you start to shift from product led to sales led as well, because you are more mature, you know your audience, you know your market, and then you can build up on your product led a more sales led strategy with a sales organization with KPIs, performance, and many channels to target and reach your audience. So in our case, we started to drive adoption by doing a lot of outreach, and then we shifted to fairs, specific and specialized fairs, where it's more inbound with this channel. And now we are shifting to indirect channels with distributors and resellers, right? So that works for us for one range of product. But tomorrow, if we launch a new product based on the same technology, we may need to restart from zero and redo this product led and sales led afterward. So I think it's not this one or the other. It's really a growth and a shift depending on where you are in your sales maturity, and of course at the company level as well.
I like that because it's not like a one size fits all solution. It really changes depending where you stand and also depending on your product. Igor, Hydromia, you operate in a niche market, I assume, at least from the outside, it seems so. Do customers discover your solution organically, or does your growth rely heavily on outbound sales efforts? How do you drive adoption and growth on the revenue side?
Well, look, as one of our investors once said, when we have a new technology in the new market, which makes us stand out as an innovator and disruptor, but this comes with a downside too. It requires a lot of education in the market. And then changing existing workflows is hard, especially in a complex value chain with multiple players. So, in order to be effective, we had to go to the end client who directly benefits from our solutions. In our case, these are asset operators and asset owners. So we embraced a pull strategy where we diligently work with the big guys to let them see the benefits in their operations. Then they qualify our technology and ask their suppliers to get upgraded with our technology. And so this requires a multi-pronged sales-led approach. That's what we've been doing.
Makes a ton of sense. And coming back to you, Ramzi, because you said you basically worked with both approaches. And often when we talk about product-led growth, as you mentioned you did in the early days, it often relies on a freemium model or even a self-service model. We mainly know that from software, where you look at Canva, for example, or Figma, and they exactly go through the same stuff, right? They start as a self-service product-led growth, and then later down the road, maybe when they prepare for an IPO, they start to heavily invest into a traditional sales force. So how did you start off with the product-led growth? Did you also offer any freemiums, any trials, or how did you pull that off? Because in B2B, this seems very difficult to me.
Indeed, it's very difficult, especially when you have a hardware component in your offering. Our hardware is the enabler for the SaaS service. So any customer that wants to try our technology needs to understand how the product works, how you need to install it, where you are going to install it. All those information require some pre-assessment in order to qualify and really make sure that it will be a successful onboarding for the customer. So a freemium is somehow something we have applied, but with a specific approach to our market. Typically, a customer can actually try for 2-3 months, have an audit report on its water footprint, on the fleet management of a sub portion of his assets. And then he can then commit for a long-term permanent and a ramp up with our solution. So to reply to your question, we were not able to provide freely the solution. What we have done is we come with our technology, we do some audits, we provide some findings and recommendations, and then we take back our technology with us once it's done. And there, if the customer is very happy with that, he will ask for additional audits or permanent installations. And there we are starting to move to the real business model that we wanted to implement. This is how we try to first demonstrate the value we are able to provide for our customers, then also move from spot on or limited in time services to permanent services with our solution.
That makes a ton of sense. And I just learned a new approach. So instead of doing a free version or something, you offer like a one-off analysis. So they see the value and then they get hooked and say, I don't want that just one time. I want that every time. And then they become a customer. Who is your typical customer in that sense?
Yeah. So as I said, we have two main target audience. One is what we call asset managers. By asset managers are companies that are directly involved in the maintenance and the service of a large fleet of assets that could be boilers, that could be water dispensers, water treatment systems. And they don't really care about the building itself. So their concern is how I can manage my fleet of assets with Drupal, with preventive maintenance, automated replenishment of consumables, and blah, 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 other additional services. Of course, water data impact and such kind of things. The other category are facility managers or building owners. And here I come back to the mention of Igor about the end customers. And there we wanted also to onboard very prestigious end customers like big banks who are interested in reducing the water footprint of their facilities. And this is a totally different approach because one boiler is very similar or a dispenser is very similar as an asset, but every building is different. So we have had also to cope with that very distinctive approach.
And how does that look like from a financial perspective? I assume when you do a one-time analysis, you probably have quite some setup costs that if they become a customer, of course, it's worth it. But if they don't become a customer, you probably make quite a significant investment. Do you lose money with that strategy? Do you offer that just that cost, or do you even make money with the one-time analysis?
The one-time analysis is profitable as first sales entry. The question is more about how many people are involved in that service, and we try to make it more and more efficient to let just one person being able to do that and coordinate with a range of partners that can go install or uninstall our solution and actually offer a valuable service that the customer is willing to pay at the end. Today, we didn't lose money, but we have lost opportunities because we have done the audit and the outcome were not as good as they expected. So the outcome was not the one what we wanted, but that's how it works. It's a number game. So you need to replicate, adapt, and fine tune.
Yeah, and it's all about value, I assume, in that sense.
Yeah.
Igor, coming back to you, you mentioned before you are basically the new technology. So in your sales game, you also have to really educate the market. And that can, I assume, take quite some time. So how do you balance this educating the market, but also the need to actually close deals and make revenue? I assume that's not always easy to balance if you have to firstly educate the market and the customers?
It is extremely hard balancing act indeed. The issue we face is that our end clients are large corporate multinationals who are not typically known to move fast. So even if when they're convinced that this is high value to them, the internal processes take quite some time. So how do we balance education and growth? This is a step process, right? So you can't sell while you educate. And so we are a bit of a special scale up in that sense. We have diversified from the very beginning, knowing that we're bringing new technology in the market and the niche market. We had to build very different enabling technologies to be able to deliver a final solution. As a kind of result out of it, each of these technologies, they have their own USP in their respective markets. So while we educate the industry on one product, we already have traction with another. So each of the business lines support another at any given point of time. Of course, this is extremely hard path for the small company. We always hear, you're a startup, you need to focus, focus, focus. But it so far has paid well for us. It de-risked our venture significantly and allows us to weather the storms. You don't always have an environment where you can easily raise money. We just lived through the last couple of years of very tight purses, right? So yeah, that's kind of how we really go about that.
I love that. So you can subsidize one product area from another one that already generates revenue. And talking about the educating part, how do you exactly do that? Is like your marketing team involved there? Is it a sales team's job? What are the activities that you perform to really educate a market? Because that's also not easy on its own. You probably need to do that over and over and over again until people really get what you're offering and what you're doing differently and why they need your new technology.
Well, you have to figure out who are the decision makers, who would benefit almost directly from your technology, and then you got to find a way to put yourself in front of them. And there are many ways to do it. Of course, trade shows, you do talks, you do demos there, people pass by, you kind of create a hook. Sometimes there are industry associations or certain kind of clubs where it's worth joining because there people with the right interests come to the table. And if your technology kind of services that area, it helps a lot. So for instance, on our optical wireless communications, there is what's called Subsea Wireless Group. It's an industry group that looks at how to standardize wireless communication technology in this marine environment. And we came in as a leader in this space, and we actually took on the development of the global industry standard on ourselves. And that earned us a lot of points and opened up doors to the big multinationals who are very interested in that approach and happy then to work with us on taking our technology forward within their operations.
So it's also, if I understand that correctly, working with existing organizations that already have earned the trust of your potential end clients, so to speak.
It's the other way around. We work with the end clients. We go to, say, offshore energy company, and we say, look, by using our communication technology, you can reduce the ship time on water by at least 5% throughout the project. And that's a lot of money for them. And the cost of a modem is really, nothing in that case. So they're interested, they test it, and they say, yeah, indeed, that's pretty cool. So then they go to their suppliers, to their service companies, contractors, and say, okay, guys, you got to use this technology because it will cost us less, right? So that's kind of how it works.
Got it. Makes sense. And before we heard from Ramzi that he said they started in product-led growth, but then sort of expanded to sales-led growth. Do you see a tendency in your industry where you would shift from sales-led growth more towards a product-led growth? Is that something that is happening at all?
Yeah, look, I would argue that the lines in the sand cannot be drawn categorically for many of sales processes. In my opinion, the most successful strategy is exactly that, is hybrid. You need to apply sales-led strategy to get your end customers understand the value and accept the change in the workflow. and demand your solution. In fact, I find it interesting that Ramsey actually is the opposite. He first starts with product led, then goes to sales. For us, it's the other way around. So, but once this is done, once the clients understand like what actually we do, then your product goes into the market. And if the product is hard to use or your business model isn't attractive, you will meet with resistance in the value chain, regardless of how strong your end client endorses you. So I think at the product-led strategy, at the center of it is user experience, it's product innovation, and it's the ecosystem that either you build or within which, how comfortably does your product sit within that ecosystem, especially for an innovation that disrupts that workflow. Then you need to think hard, how actually do you present a new workflow that is acceptable and comfortable for the people who got used to what they've done for years, right? So I think that the most successful industrial tech companies inherently grow with a hybrid model.
I love that. And it makes a ton of sense to talk to you both, because you did exactly the opposite. But in the end, both of you work with a hybrid approach. Ramsey, back to you. You really laid out very well on how you started out with the product-led growth. And I wonder, when was then the time where you said, okay, now we have to also start working with sales-led growth? Was there any moment or any ceiling that you hit where you said, now we could grow faster or even beyond what would be possible alone with the product-led growth?
Yeah, I like very much Crossing the Chasm book. And I love also how they structured how a startup goes different stages of maturity. So once you reach product maturity, the next one is, most of the time, of course, there are many exceptions to that, but most of the time you need to set up your distribution network and channels and master that. And then you can really create a dominance in the market or in the segment you are active in. So in our case, I think we have reached a product market fit with few customers that were actually relevant enough in their market and significant enough in their market. And then we started to think about, we cannot scale this business without having resellers and distributors with us. So partners that will share our value, mission, and go to the market and sell what we have done in their respective distribution network that they have built on their own. So that was the moment where we said, okay, now we have a great product. It's not finished, it's not polished for sure, but it's the moment that we need to start with distribution mindset where others will sell in our place. And we can then also, as a Drupal, as a solution provider, as a technology provider, we can set back and focus on developing technology and products that others will sell in the future. And in my vision, Drupal will stay in its comfort zone as a solution maker and not as a solutions seller. And it's very important to keep that in order to understand when it's the moment to let others do that job that they do better than us, because they are in that market. They know the market. So it's also what Igor has said. When you have a complex value chain with distributors, resellers, dealers, and customers, all of them have touch points. All of them know how they reach their own customers. So we are not going to, I would say, shortcut that. We are going to embed this value chain. And the best way we have seen until today, but as we know, challenging times, maybe we need to do some shortcuts and do direct to customer channel to avoid all those intermediaries. Maybe tomorrow, for a specific product that we will build, it will be relevant to do. So what I'm trying to say is that there is no one truth. There is no one way to go to the market. It's always about what is the audience, what is the product, what is the best way for the company at a specific stage to do that. And this is where you see a team that is really open, listening, getting the signals from the market to adapt and execute on the right strategy and hope for the best, of course.
100%.
Yeah.
Igor, both approaches obviously have, as everything in life, their pros and cons on its very own. But I wonder, what are the specific KPIs that you focus on from a sales-led and from a product-led perspective? Maybe you can give us a bit more insights there on what you focus on within Hydromia in your company.
Well, when we talk about sales overall, the omnipotent KPI is just that. It's how much sales you deliver monthly, quarterly, and annually. So in this sense, it applies regardless of which model you choose. Customer acquisition cost is another KPI that both strategies should use. On a finer level, yes, there could be differences. Like for sales-led approach, for us right now, what's critical is time to market metric. So like measuring your sales cycle, how long is your sales cycle, and how is your sales cycle reducing over time, or is it not reducing, right? So because that is critical to cash. Another metric is sales effectiveness, i.e., revenue per salesperson, right? Where we stand today, where we want to be, and how that goes.
What is the average sales cycle that you have to deal with?
It differs product from product, but I would say on average, I would say 6 months, really.
Yeah. But I mean, that's probably the norm in B2B sales, I would say. Usually you end up around 6 months. It depends a bit. What is it for you, Ramzi? Is it shorter? Is it longer?
No, it's longer. It's longer because actually we have an invasive product that you need to install with plumbing standards in physical environments that you need to understand and collect some data before doing anything. And of course, depending on the metrics you choose, you also need to understand, have you been able to enter in that customer, or have you been able to ramp up with that customer? And the metrics are very different depending on how you look at it. So is it more acquisition or more retention and growth? In our case, 85% of our current customers drive the upsell. So we have a strong business model that is driving retention and growth thanks to the existing customers. So we rely less on acquiring new customers. But again, the retention of today on a specific product, like Igor mentioned, do not mean that you can replicate the same figures on a new product that you are just launching for a new ICP. The metrics needs to be really specific to the product, to the segment, and needs to be aligned, because salespeople tend to look at the numbers positively, and the management of the salespeople tend to look at the numbers negatively. So you need to find really numbers or metrics that are transparent and are comfortable for anyone in the company, because we always tend to look at these metrics either with positive or negative approach, because we know that some details are hidden in the metrics. It's a simplification of the reality, in fact. So it's always subject to argument and so on.
But in the end, I also like what Igor said, right? In the end, you are measured with the revenue that you bring in. That is your impact. That's what you need to survive as a company. And all the other metrics, they give you sort of a bit of a feeling how you're doing. Are you heading in the right direction? Because it can take 6 months or even longer until you see the revenue metric ticking up. So it's more of a best estimate to see whether you're on the right way or not.
Some metrics are really life savings. I mean, for a company, you really need to know what is your conversion rate, what is your client acquisition cost, and LTV. As any SaaS company, it's really important to control and have a very strong hand on those metrics.
And Igor, I wonder from both perspectives, but let's start with the sales-led growth in that sense. You have salespeople. The great thing is they basically on a daily basis talk to customers, or at least potential customers. So I assume you probably get a lot of feedback for your product, for your approach, for your positioning. How do you make sure that you can translate and also prioritize that feedback from salespeople directly into better products, better marketing approaches, etc.? What is your go-to process there?
We do not yet have an army of salespeople to kind of work in that type of scenario. We are right now transitioning from almost like pure development company to a commercial company right now. Yeah, so we're actually in the market for Series A to help us scale the technologies that we've developed. And the sales, they came, of course, we worked with end users and kind of organic sales. What you do is, I've always believed that you make everybody in your organization understand what product does in the market for a client, because you touch product. Everybody touches product. Even accountant touches the product when they, process an invoice. And what I do in Hydromea is that we make them to be close to the end users. I encourage all our engineers to go to the field at least once. We take them with us to trade shows. They're in the loop in many customer meetings we have, because a great developer always has her own thoughts, ideas, and vision of how the product shall be, right? Because everybody has that. But as bright as these ideas could be, if he or she is not in touch with the market, it has a very high likelihood to go sideways and missing the point. At Hydromea, we spend a lot of time listening to the customer, working with the customer, and delighting the customer at every level of the company. And we feel that through the feedback that's what actually earns us trust, more so than how innovative our product is.
Got it. And Ramsey, how is that from a product-led growth perspective? Because there you don't have, of course, you also have customer interactions, obviously, but probably not with the sales team. Even if it's not an army, you probably lack an information source there. How do you still make sure that you get the right feedback and can actually improve on all levels based on that?
What we have implemented at Drupal is the voice of customers. So we have opened many channels for customers from the product, from the sales team. I also, as a CEO, take the phone and call some customers randomly to ask them how they feel about the product they are using. Is there anything that we can improve, change? Is there any issues that they are facing? And actually, thanks to this feedback, we have been able typically to hire someone specifically on the onboarding of customers. That is the person that will follow the customer from the first meeting to demo until the activation and the use of the product along the way. And it's a very important aspect. So customers tend to qualify your product not only by the features that it provides, but also by everything it's around your product. The support, the people that they can reach, the materials, marketing materials that the company can provide to help them sell your product. So if they feel that you are in their shoes, not only in the product, but in their shoes as a company, using your product and involved in that business, we have seen really tremendous improvement in that regard. So even though we know our product have bugs, are not working as designed sometimes and so on, but I think this balance a lot with a product-led strategy. It helps you also co-build your product with your customers. And that's very important. It's not you in your room that you build your product. It's with people that use it every day, maybe, and find it sometimes very difficult to use because they are not engineers. We are working with blue collars, so they just need simple things. And as engineers, we tend to complexify things. So it's very good to stick to that feedback as a source of truth for us.
Absolutely. And I feel you also touched up on an important subject, the speed that you can have as a startup. Like if there's a support request or if there's a feedback, the speed I feel is something that can really set you apart from larger companies who are just by nature much slower. And I feel that's a really unfair advantage that startups can play to their advantage, actually.
Yeah.
I like that.
Totally right.
So you both outlined very well why it's important to be hybrid. You can choose maybe sales-led strategy first, and then you switch over to product-led or the other way around. Now, to wrap up the conversation, I'm just curious to hear from both of you. If you had to choose only one of these strategies, Igor, sales-led growth or product-led growth? You can only choose one, not the hybrid, not both, only one.
Yeah, I think you can make any product you want as great as it can be, but in the end, the person who uses the product, if that person is not happy, then you have a big problem. This is why, in my opinion, a single crucial mistake that many industrial tech companies do is that they develop an amazing tech, they impress their end clients using sales-led strategy, but when it comes to go to market, today the daily user experience of how it functions within the ecosystem, it sometimes disappoints, right? In the end, as much as the end client wants it, there will be resistance within the chain that will be difficult to overcome as well. Actually, all of us experience this with a product once in a lifetime, or maybe even more. So I would say that, yeah, product strategy is a must, whether you start with sales-led strategy or not. Okay, that depends on really your particular setup and how you do it. But if your product doesn't work well or has issues in the market in any way, then it's not going to be a successful business.
Absolutely agree. Ramsey, your choice, sales or product-led growth?
As an engineer, I'm always fond of product-led strategies because I think the product in a disruptive company is the core, is the essence of the company. So the product is always at the center of the value proposition. So for me, it always starts from the product. We have seen very successful companies that started with just a slide deck and asked what is the problem that the customers they target they want to solve, and they build the product to solve that problem. So we can have very different approaches, but our DNA was building a product and bring it to the market. We have done that not successfully at the beginning because we have seen many issues, many hookups in the market with clients with the first version of the product that helped us actually build a new version of the product and solve many issues thanks to their feedback. So I think product led is a good strategy if you are able to create a strong relationship with your target market. That's really important. If you are too far from the users of your product, you may actually use a lot of money and effort in doing a product that will miss the target in the market because you don't have this relationship. And that's why sales led could be a very good way to cope with that.
Got it. I think it was clear from both of you, despite having different starting points in the early days, that in the end it's a hybrid approach. But fascinatingly, you both chose product-led growth when I put you on the spot now. But I felt not because of its unique distribution strategy, but simply because of the importance and the high relevance of the product per se. And I think that's the right focus. That's the core of every startup. You have nothing to sell if you don't have a good product, basically, no matter the sales approach.
Yeah, I think it's maybe the definition sometimes could be confusing, sales-led versus product-led. It doesn't mean the product-led does not need sales organization around it. Of course it does. But, sales can go only so far. If the product disappoints and disappoints and disappoints, then that spreads around in the market. And yes, you can have excellent salespeople that will still sell some, but it just will not be successful business long term. So, and in product, through the user, through how it works and what it delivers, that's what is critical to understand.
100%. I think that's the beautiful point to end this conversation. I think this is the perfect summary. Igor, Ramsey, thank you so much for your time today. I wish you all the best and lots of success with your amazing companies. And thank you again for taking the time.
Thank you. Nice talking to you.
Thank you, Sylvain. Thank you, Igor.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, you can support us by rating our show on Apple Podcasts. This way, we can reach an ever-growing number of aspiring entrepreneurs.